Well, it was sort of on and off again for a while while Neptune was squaring the descendant, but then we'd split up during this Neptune squaring the ascendant phase and Saturn opposing the Venus. I was one unhappy camper. How could this happen? How could you do this? But then she left. I'm staying out on the farm by myself, and just I can move back into the city. And then by the time it comes to the Saturn Neptune squaring my ascendant again, we got back together again. We split up, and then she finds out she's pregnant. So we split up, then we got back together again, and Neptune was squaring my ascendant. We moved back in. We moved back to, she had the baby. The baby came in, and a month after 3 months, by the end of December, she left, and the marriage was over again. And she took the baby with her, and I couldn't find them for 4 or 5 years. So this was a really disruptive confusion. See the Neptune confusion and the like they just come in, and it's like a music going on that we're dancing to, even if we're not knowing it. So the climax of this was on 72 February, or 72 February. I had to have my teeth out. My teeth were bad. Went to the dentist. They took all my teeth out in the hospital. I'm sitting there. My wife shows up with her lover at the hospital, and that was the end of my marriage. And my ego, without having teeth, was not very good at the time, to say the least. Then it was regrouping, and then so like there's a lot of really dramatic things. But by 74, just as see at the end of this, I had these big disruptions. The marriage ended, and everything ended. But Uranus conjuncted my sun, and at this point, my astrology is blossoming. I'm breaking through. I'm seeing it. I set up the company, and then I started an astrology bookstore. Just shortly after, first hit the conjunction, I'm importing books for my students. I'm starting to teach, but as you get into the next year, I started the bookstore. I started a national organization, and I started a national publication. So it was really a whole jump up where the astrology just lit up and took over against the confusion and the chaos of the past. So I just wanted to show you, give you an example. How am I doing for time? Oh, we're good. Okay. So I wanted to just show you, this is more detailed than you're usually going to get. Here I had it, so I really have things every year where you can go through and see the things happening that are paralleling these transits. But normally you can have 4 or 5 things. You see something's going on. You get a sense of what's going on. Someone's out of affair. Someone's getting married. There's a gullible thing about finances. There's visions and confusions very deep down, not very practical. You have Saturn opposing the sun and coming and squaring. You're seeing, I had great inner growth during that time, but really outer pathos. But the outer pathos, you could say, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. That outer pathos, if I didn't have that, I wouldn't have had the inner growth, or I don't think I would have. Wouldn't have played it the same way. So who knows why we go through what we go through. But in knowing this, it would be difficult. Like when I decided I was in love, I want to get married. We're living together. Let's get married. Neptune was on my Venus. She couldn't have talked me out of it. But really, I was in Toronto. I've come from Montreal. But I didn't know. I didn't have any friends in the city. I just had the one lady I was in love with, and even my best man was her friend. So it was really a one-sided thing, and I was very gullible in that, over-enchanted in that. But being with someone was against the background of being alone for 2 years was quite a remarkable phenomenon. I was totally enchanted and inspired, gullible, lost, whatever. But that's how it happened for me. That's part of my foundations of coming into astrology, coming through mystical things, and then eventually having the vision which brought me to astrology, which brought me to career, which got me to be a little more practical in the world. Not practical in most terms, but was for me. And I found a working that I could do and be inspired, but it cost me a marriage, it cost me a relationship. Like there were a couple of different layers of things going on. So this is the value of this, of having like the 2 years of being alone in the room with Saturn opposed my sun. I didn't feel I belonged anywhere. I don't belong here. What can I do? Everywhere I went, there was failure. I didn't have any skills to work or to have children. I left university before I finished. The family was there. I had no support. I ended up in India, and someone says you can go and be alone. I thought, well, I'll try that. And then once I was in there, I had to wait a little more, wait a little bit more, wait a little bit more. I was biding my time, just sitting there. I knew I didn't want to go out. I just kept chanting and meditating inside until this period went past. And once it lifted, I came out of the room without knowing this. So anytime I go through this is a really, for me, a fascinating point in my life. It's a personal thing, but you have to be personal when you're working at this level of astrology. I could have taken another time when I had started national groups or was high profile, but this was a more puzzling one, but it's a good start. So, okay. Where are we? Oh yeah, we're just about done. Okay, that's good. So this is a run at a chart for a period of time to look at something, to get a sense of it. Really, you should have your whole chart spelled out in these 8-year graphs, and you have your whole life. You can look back at any time and you can reconstruct your history and look at it and see it differently. Okay, we've done that going through the transits, but organizing this way makes it almost easier to go back and do and see. Because you're seeing, bringing them together, but not just bringing them together like a list that's all complicated on a printout. This is separating it, seeing it, where you can look at the streams of stress coming in and the types of stress coming in. So it's a very useful thing. Okay. I change anything? No. Yeah. Okay. Save. Okay. Now, next week. Okay. First, I'll be sending you this, but I'm putting it on a video so anyone following these on videos can get it. This is the chart we're going to use for next week. This is the homework for next week. It's a lot, but it's no more than you would have to do someone's reading. Here's the birth date. Okay, consultation date. So you're going to have, you got to do 2014, 2018, to 27, and 2013 to 17, and then 18 up to 2022. You're going to do the 8 years. You're going to do the whole Saturn cycle. You have to, okay, you got the natal chart. And this was done when these rules were set when we had the printout and we highlighted the squares and the oppositions and the major, the squares and oppositions and the aspects, and then trines and sextiles on the natal chart with a colored pencil so they stand out a bit more. And they draw the lines across the ascendant, a bit of a shade the half below the horizon. So that's the natal chart and the aspectarian and the points. Complete the natal points from, well, you have the graph, you have the Excel sheet where you just have to put in the planets and the signs and it does all the points. And then the planets and the house, it does all the points. So you have that Excel points total program. So that's a few minutes. Print them out. Then you got to calculate conjunction squares and oppositions for Saturn to Saturn, for Saturn to the Sun, and fill it on the graph, Saturn to the 4 angles. So it's just repeating, making the 90-year graph. And then you have to fill up the drop and fill in the make the whole graph. Put all the 3 pieces together. So you got these for the next 4 things to calculate, and drop. That's all just making the 90-year wheel of Saturn. The last things is calculate all the conjunctions, squares, oppositions of Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto to the Moon, Sun, Mercury, Venus, and Mars. I don't think you need to do to your Jupiter and Saturn at this stage. But to the ascendant and descendant, yes. And with the 1 degree orb rating. And this is 5 years, we want 4 years. That's good. Just fill in the 8-year graph. You got it. Sometimes you'd calculate it for the 5 years before, because then you can see if there's something big happening just before, then it would begin to see. So, okay, that's the work. That's what you got to do. And then on top of that, you have this timeline. This is the timeline for this person's events, 5 or 10 things out of their life. January 77, September 85, 90, 93, 93, 99, 2001, 2015, 2017. So there's no specific question. So he's curious about what's coming up in the world. What am I going to be dealing with? We're going to have to deal with this without a specific question, but we're still going to be able to get a sense of the person's life. And you have the timeline, so you'll be able to relate this to the Saturn cycle. Spend a little time looking at each event, where the things happened on the Saturn cycle on the graph, and then when you're looking at the last 4 years and what's ahead, see what aspects are there and try and relate it around this and see what's coming up and get a sense of how you get a sense of that person's timing. And then we're going to work to try and see how would you consult or how would you advise that person. Okay, so if you don't do the work, you just watch it, but you're going to miss a lot. If you do the work, you're going to gain. This is going to become yours. It'll become your texture you can work with. It's makes a big difference. It's worth putting this little effort in. It's a lot. Well, it wasn't hard using the 20-year graphs to do this and do it onto a printed sheet, but it's a big difference from just keeping everything together and having everything jump together. Here you can see the different levels working. So this is our homework for next week and the chart to do for next week. And we're on our way. We're starting our level 7, and each class is going to be, by the end of this, we're going to have 12 sessions, and you'll develop the muscles. So I want you to be able, what are you going to say to this person? How are you going to advise them? What do you think you're going to talk to this person about before I do the session? Because if you're seeing that, then you see how what we come to is different or the same as how you would see if it's the same as what you said, or if it's different, because there's many different solutions to the same problem. So it's worth seeing that. And then you get the best of it. Okay, so I'm gonna leave it here, and good luck, and I'll talk to you next week. Okay, thanks, bye.